Okay, well, hey, we're back. Okay, so I have this bike set up in my stand. Like I said, this is just an old Schwinn Latour, uh, late 80s, early 90s. Well, not late 80s, I would say. Okay, so here we are, and so you can see it, and we got some Sun Tour components and blah, blah, blah. But this one is one I bought real cheap just for some parts off of it because it was like 30 bucks. Because it didn't have bad stuff on it. It's got the old Suntour, like the original generation of index shifters and stuff on it. So this one's pretty much just as it's set. I haven't really done much to this one. I'm not really. It was more for parts, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, let me set this up so we can talk about like derailleurs. Okay. So what happens is a lot of times you get like this, and probably like with your cables, it's hard to get these cables. You get the rear one on this one is pretty good because it's um, it's nice and it's taut like it should be. But then like this one is kind of loose. It doesn't have the it's just a little sloppy. Even if it works, it's just that's no good. Okay, so and what ends up being a little tricky on these things sometimes is to be able to loosen up the clamp because you initially would think, oh, I'll just set it forward and I'll loosen it up and I'll just yank it, I'll just pull it tight and I'll retighten it and everything will be fine. Okay, so I'll just do this and then I'll tighten it back up and ta-da. And then what you find is it's better, but it's not really. There's still a lot of play in this thing. So here's what you probably want to do with it. To get a little trick to get that taut is you almost need to like over adjust it in the first place. So I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of the limit screws that you've got on the derailleur. If you come in here, clearly we have, it's going to focus very well, but we've got right there, and then the other one for the two edges of travel, the high and the low. Okay, here's something that I found that works pretty good for doing that. Just to kind of make it like come out right is, all right, go ahead and loosen it up. Now we don't have to loosen it up just yet. What you do is that you end up cranking it in the adjustment screw to the point that it's really not far enough. And sometimes these adjustment screws are a little tight, so it would help to like pull the derailleur out like that. And then just crank this adjustment screw in. Let's just go about as far as we can go with it, okay? So now it's too far, and the limit, it'll never, if we shifted it out now, but it doesn't really, it's not far enough that, well, it just barely shifts back, but not very well. Yeah, just barely caught. Okay. It's like we're bouncing. Okay, do that. Then set your shifter all the way forward, like it should be. Then go ahead, loosen it up. This might almost be better with just an L-shaped one, but that's what I got right now. Loosen it up. Then go ahead and pull it taut. Sometimes you can use a little, sometimes you can twist a little bit right up against there like that. Then go ahead and tighten up your cable, clamp. Okay, now we'll back it off a little bit simply because it's a lot easier to turn when there isn't derailleur pressure on the little limit screws. Then we'll crank it out to something closer to where it like should have been. I'll go 3 or 4 turns on it. Now, when you go all the way forward with it, it holds the tension, and then that's more like it should be. Now we got bing, it's nice and tight, and this one is a little loose actually, but it's nice and tight. That's a pretty easy trick to do that. The other way would be to set it where you want it, and then we'll have to go through. I'm sure you've seen the whole, adjusting the derailleur. You can look up videos on that, adjusting the travel so it just catches here, and then it just just enough, and so you can adjust so it doesn't rub on the cages when you go back and forth like that. The other thing you could do would be to like back your shifter off. I'll cock this up a little bit. Back your shifter off. Not quite all the way forward, but just backed off a little bit like this. Okay, and then maybe crank it way in the tightness so it locks it. Okay, then adjust the cable. And then when you go ahead and then bring it, and then when you go ahead and push it all the way forward, then it, then it'll grab and tighten up. But I actually think this way works better. I might have that ass backwards, but either way, you'll figure it out. You just got to think about it a little bit. Let's see. Another thing to remember with these older road bikes when you're working on them is that a lot of times it's almost impossible to get where the cages aren't rubbing ever. You know what I mean? That you can go to the most extreme gears where you've got, how am I trying to say? Where you've got the, you're on the out chain ring, and then you're all the way to the inner chain ring where the chain is having to basically do it's as much of a curve because they're not parallel. They're like, they're out like this. And it can be very hard to ever get it adjusted perfectly. So you've got travel there and you can just hit your derailleurs and it doesn't rub. The trick to remember is that before these early generation of indexed ones and so forth, is that they weren't really ever designed to do that. The farther out of parallel you have, where you have like, let's say this is on the smallest one here, or you got, go ahead and shift this one up maybe. Okay, you're on the outer chain ring here, and maybe you decide to pull all the way to go to the innermost chain ring on the back. Like this.